Hello, my name is Michelle, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. On the podcast today is Andrea Liebross. She's a business and a life coach, and she works with high-achieving women entrepreneurs. She's the host of the podcast Time to Level Up, and she just published a fantastic book called She Thinks Big. We're going to be diving into that with a conversation with Andrea, talking about intention, integration, priorities, and agency in our business journey. And I'm excited to have you join us. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hi, Andrea. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Michelle, I am thrilled to be here.
I'm happy to be here too. We're doing back-to-back podcasts. We just filmed one for you and your crowd of listeners, and now we're doing it for mine. That's super exciting for me.
It is. I love how we just kind of have continued conversations too. So it's helpful.
Before we jump in, you and I met at Luann's Power Talk Friday. That was in Dallas in April. And
Yes.
It was so funny because you gave everybody a book, and I got this beautiful book that you signed for me. And but even before we didn't really look at the book or go into the book in that one day, right? And
Right.
You and I had a conversation, and we were both like, "Hey, we need to talk as soon as we get back. Like we need to connect." And then it just worked out that we both we're connecting honestly for the real first time on both
That's
of our
true.
podcasts.
That's true.
Isn't that crazy?
True. Yes.
Before we jump in and have you tell all about yourself, I'm going to give a shout out to Kate Grunke. So Kate, the socialite, she and I met years ago, right as she had just started doing her business in the interiors industry. And I coached her and worked with her as well for years. And when she met you, she emailed me and she's like, "You've got to meet Andrea. You're going to love her. Like, she's the real deal. You're going to love her." So I just thought I knew that in my mind, but our paths had just not crossed.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's great.
So
That's
then
great.
to get to see you, and then I think she may have worked with you some too,
She
but
did.
then to get to see you at Luann Live and meet you, I was like, okay, I can see why she loved her so much.
Yeah, we worked together for a while, like maybe a little more than a year. And she was on my podcast. I actually met her because I was on her podcast. And after I was on her podcast, she reached out to me and she said, "I think I actually need you." So
Isn't that so funny how that works?
Yes.
I've hired multiple people that I've had on the podcast, and I've been hired by multiple people on my podcast.
So funny.
It's just a great way to connect.
It really is. And to understand what someone does and how they help people. It's 100%.
Yeah. So Andrea, before we jump in, I've got some things to share with you. And I told you I wasn't even going to share them off camera. I was going to wait till we could be on camera and on air to share with you. But tell us a little bit about your story and how you got to the point of where you are today.
So, okay, we could like, how deep do we want to go? How far back do we want to go? I will just start with really the work experience that I had prior to starting my own coaching business in 2018. I worked for a company where I was recruiting and hiring and training new business owners. So they almost were like franchise owners. Technically, on paper, legally, they weren't franchise owners, but that was kind of the premise of this business. And the part I loved the most, I stayed for 10 years. And the part I loved the most after reflecting, this was not occurring while I was there, but after reflecting, is I really loved helping them grow their business, kind of get past what I would now call the messy middle of the business and get to that next level. What I realized, though, is that in that process, me, myself, and I did not enjoy necessarily working for that company after a while because I was being forced to stay within the box, I'll call it, that corporate entity was providing me. So if my new hire or I had some great idea that we brought to the table, either we got, oh, that's a great idea, but we can't really do that right now. Or that sounds too risky. Or I'm not sure, we'll have to do a lot of research before we let you, kind of thing. So I was getting put into this, what I'll call small thinking box, and not being able to think bigger. And then that was then rubbing off on the work I was doing in my own role in helping these entrepreneurs grow and start, then grow their businesses. And I didn't love it. I didn't love it. I had, after a while, the joke was, if I have one more great big idea that they tell me to, so sad, too bad, can't do it, I'm out. And then one day I was out. I was out. But I
Did you feel like
recognized,
you were, can I ask you, did you feel
yeah,
like you were trying to work with your hands tied? Because that's the
yes, that's
picture that is coming
exactly,
up to me
yes,
is, we want you to do your best. No, don't do that. No, don't do that. But keep it in the
yes.
box. Keep it in the box. Keep it in the box.
Yes, that's exactly what was I mean, my hands were tied, my mouth was tied, taped over
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes. Don't tell anyone that, don't say that, don't whatever.
Don't offer
S-
that.
Don't offer that, exactly. So, when it, especially once these businesses started to roll, okay, so we kind of follow the formula, we'll call it, and then they needed to get creative and a little more curious on how to get to that next level and what was going to work for them and what was going to align not only in their business but with their family and their personal life.
Hmm.
um I loved that sort of crossroads, but yet I felt like I couldn't do what I wanted to do. So after a while I was like, I'm out. And I hired my first coach at that point. I had never worked with a coach. And we were in a conference room. I still can picture it. And there was a big whiteboard. And she's like, let's just brainstorm all the things that you loved about, why did you stay there for 10 years? What did you love about this? So I'm talking, and she's writing. And then I see her in the little corner down in the right-hand corner. She writes coach. Okay. Like in little letters. I said, what's going on? She said, really, all these things you're talking about, these are all the things a coach does. You should start your own coaching business. Really? I said, really? She's like, yeah, you totally should. Well, it took me a little bit to buy into that idea. I had started two other businesses before. So I was like, another one, I don't know. Maybe it'd just be easier to work for someone. Let's just work for someone. That's way easier. So kind of the juncture of that is I did work for another coach for a handful of months while I went and got officially certified. And I decided I did not like working for someone else. I wanted to work for my own self. So that is when I started this coaching business now, like more than 6 years ago. So that's what I'm at. And so every day, what I do every day now is I work with female entrepreneurs who are in, honestly, multiple, they're not all newbies. They're not all veterans. They run the gamut. Some people are making their first 100K. Some people are making multiple 7 figures, and really help them with the biggest part of business, which I think is mindset. So I say it's 80% mindset and 20% systems. Like, you totally need both. But if you don't have that mindset component, then your business is not going to be successful, because you can have all the systems in the world. You can, and hire out everything. But if you're still operating from that same brain with those same thoughts that you had on day one, you're not going to grow. So I help people really think bigger and create that freedom of time and money and energy that they want in their businesses.
And you do it well.
Thank
Even
you.
though I've not worked directly with you, I started reading the book because you, of course, gave me this beautifully signed book. And as I told your listeners, I haven't even marked it up. And my listeners know that I am a get out that marker and scribble all over it. But instead, what I decided to do with your book is, because I believe it's one I'm going to go through more than once, as I got a journal and started
Yeah.
journaling in it, right? Because I really
Yes.
wanted to write more than I could scribble and mark up. I also, this is so weird for me because I've never done this with a book this way. and yours felt different to me. I mean, I'm being real, and I don't know why it felt different. Other than I thought I also did not want to highlight anything in the book, because the next time I read it, I wanted it to be fresh. Because when you highlight and you tend to go back and pick it up, your eye is drawn to what you've highlighted. And that's kind of what you see all over again.
Yes.
And I kind of felt like I wanted to go through your book a second time and give myself the gift of discovery again. And I think it's a beautiful gift that I'm giving to myself, and I didn't even recognize how much I needed it. And I think your book is a perfect book to do that with. So,
and one of the concepts in the book, I talk about how our businesses are kind of like spirals, like spiraling up. And that next time you go through your book, you're going to be in a different spiral, right?
That's
So you're
right.
going to have a different set of eyes and ears and
Exactly.
thoughts.
And I didn't want to limit that by marking in the book that, right? I guess something in me was just like, don't mark in this book. And I was like, okay, Michelle, I won't mark in the book. We've been talking on this podcast about the messy middle for years, because it happens. We get these big dreams. We talk about what we want to do, what we want to build, and we start down that path. And it's not easy. I'm reading another book right now. And when I finish yours, I'll tell you the name of it. Let me look it up. I've got it in my pictures, but it's in my other room where I do my morning study. It's called Your Next 5 Moves: Master the Art of Business Strategy. And it's a good adjunct after this book. Yeah, you have to check it out. But just the going through the two of them and giving myself a chance to think bigger and deeper and wider. I think what's so interesting, Andrea, is I've been in business for a long time. The messy middle is going to come. It's going to come for every one of us. He even made the comment in the other book. That's the point I was going to make, is that we think I'm going to start my own business because it'll be easier. And there is nothing easier about it. No. But what it does is it gives you the freedom to put your vision into the world. I was thinking the whole time you were kind of describing your first 10 years, your vision aligned with the vision of the company until it didn't. Exactly. And that was right. Yes. And then my vision aligned with other visions until they didn't. And there's a great book we just did in our book club called Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud. Have you read that book?
No, I have not.
Okay, put that one on if you're a reader, put that on your list. Necessary Endings. And what he talks about is there are times when you have to have an ending so that you can have the next beginning. Kind of like you talked about the adventure, right? Or the journey. We can't go on that journey dragging everything from the past. That's the same whole reason, like we clear out our house before we move to the next house, so we're not just transferring junk from one place to the other. And so as our business does that evolution, that spiral that you talk about, right? That iterative process of going through up leveling, we've got to let some things go to be able to move forward.
I like to say that the past is a teacher.
That's right.
But it is not a fortune teller.
I know. I wrote that down in my notes. That was a good one.
So the past is a teacher. It's not a fortune teller. And the present is really just what we're comfortable with, right? Even if you don't love where you are, your brain and body, it's used to being in that place. So you really can't do much big thinking by looking at the past. You can't really think big, actually, sometimes from the very present. You have to go access that future you, right? So, but this is hard, especially for women. This is super hard to go find that future you, because we're just trying to get through the day. I mean,
we're just trying to get through the day. But I think that we had just done Necessary Endings in the book club. Okay. And I come back and I did, oh gosh, I've got another book here. I'm going to throw it out. The 7 Primal Questions. Okay. All right. So I did Necessary Endings. I did another one called It's Okay to Be the Boss. We're just in April and I've read all these books. Then I did the 7 Primal Questions. It's the 7 questions, Andrea, that every one of us is in his world. We're driven by one question. And I'm going to tell you why this was so important for me before I did your book. Okay, the 7 questions that he tells us to unpack are: am I safe? Am I secure? Am I loved? Am I wanted? Am I successful? Am I good enough? And do I have a purpose? And it's kind of like your why. Before the age of 18, we've all been imprinted where our our minds and bodies are trying to answer. We're always cycling through all 7, but there's one that each of us has that is a primal question that our bodies and subconscious are working to get to yes.
Yep.
And
So
if we
true.
can figure out what that one question is for us, then instead of being held back from our next adventure or big thinking, we can use it to fuel us in a different way by answering the question ourselves. And I'll give you an example. My primal question is, am I safe? Okay. I didn't even think, I don't walk around the world thinking, am I safe?
Right.
That's not how I engage with the world. But it clearly is how I subconsciously engage with the world. It might be, am I safe physically? Am I safe emotionally? Like, how am I taking in the world around me? So when I started digging into what does that mean for me? How does it show up in my life? I've talked to my coaches about it, that kind of thing. Then I did She Thinks Big. So that when
Okay,
I
I love
read it and it's talking about fear holding you back, which fear? We got list of fears.
I think I
We have
named 9
fears.
fears in there.
That's right.
Yes.
What fear is it that's really holding me back? And what is the root of that fear? Okay. So we went through, and because I knew, all right, well, my fear, I'm gonna put in air quotes for those listening, not watching, my fear is the fear of safety. So now let me, with the lens of am I safe, look at where I've made plans or look at what I've done. What was I afraid of in the realm of safety? And so it just like opened up my whole world at that point to go, wait a minute, my body might not feel safe, but my brain says I can put some risk tolerance in place.
Yep.
I can be safe. So then I can move forward. So it's like what I did was I looked to the future, but I answered the question for myself, which allowed my thinking to open up to take the next step. So there's like my concoction, necessary endings, what's got to go, primal question, what am I really afraid of? What's really driving me? And then She Thinks Big. All right, let's put all that crap over here to the side. Let's go.
I
There
love
you
that.
go. That's what just happened to me.
So good. And the those primal questions, it reminds me of the motivational triad, which are these 3
Yes.
things that I say there's 3 things that everybody wants. You want to be safe, comfortable, you want things to be easy and efficient, right? That they have to feel good to you. So that's
That's right.
exactly what those
Yeah, it's
primal.
a lot of the
Yeah,
same kind of
it
thing. That's
is.
why
It is.
it was just interesting that I have been in groups that these have been like, right, what's been coming at me. And then we meet, you hand me your book. I'm just gonna give you a
Divine intervention.
I know, exactly. And I'm going to let you talk about the book. I'm going to shut up, but it's only because I'm so in love with this book. I mean, I really am. What I think was so good about it, and I'm just going to tell you, and I'm saying it because I want the listeners to go get this book, right? We're going to put
Okay,
a link at the bottom.
go for it.
But what I loved was you led through, like, you started at the beginning. I teach strategy too, right? I get it. But when somebody who teaches strategy reads a book about strategy that kind of just gives you a different way to think and look, like I know that on the podcast, I can give you insights on the financial side and you're like, oh, well,
Yeah.
you did the same for me over here. And so being able to just write it down, you ask thought-provoking questions that are different than some of the questions I've been asked before. And maybe it was also timing, Andrea. I was
Yes,
just
it's
in a
all right.
place that I wanted to explore and do it. But I love that you stepped us through the process in the book. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I organized it, and this was hard for me to organize, to be honest.
I
Like, I'll go
bet.
back to writing it. The publisher I was working with was pushing me to create an outline, create an outline, create an outline, and it took me months because what I do with my clients is not linear necessarily. It's
Exactly.
not like we're going to do this, this, and this in this particular order, and everybody's the same. It's very circular, and it looks different for everybody. And a lot of how the value I add to someone is by listening to what they're giving me and then asking them questions. But I need that input, right? So writing a book, there was no input. I just had to do output. And when I finally got to the place, though, I said, all right, there's 3 big things here. There's your big mindset. So the first part's mindset. Then you have to plan. So then I called it big plan. And then there's big results. So it's like, okay, if I think about things, I create the plan, I put the plan into action, what happens? There are the results, and how do I deal with those? Almost like, how do I deal with the aftermath of the big thinking?
That is so true, because I hear a lot, and I know you see a lot, that like fear of success. Like, what happens if it all
Yes.
goes right? How am I going to handle that? I had somebody a week or so ago say, Michelle, I've got all these sales coming in. I had to stop the sales. And I'm like, whoa, what are you doing? Let's go higher. Like, don't stop the sales.
Yeah.
Like, let them
Yeah.
come in. I mean, within reason, set timeframes, but goodness, you're telling me that you want to grow, but you're holding yourself back from saying yes. These aren't aligning, right? As they would say,
Right.
the math's not mathing on that. So we need to work on that. I want to make a comment about, there's one thing, well, there's a lot of things that stick out to me in the book, but there was one thing that, again, it was very, because of some of the other work that I'm doing, it was a very good reminder for me. I am an extremely high achieving woman. I know you to be that as well. I know the majority of our listeners on both of our podcasts are the same
They
thing.
are.
Even if they don't see themselves that way, if you're going to start a company and start a business and do this, you're high achieving. Let's just lay the groundwork. And in that high achievement, it is very difficult to, I'm going to put in air quotes, balance all the things. So we all know in life coaching, they give you that wheel of life kind of thing.
Yes.
Like, here are your
Yes.
7 to 10 things. It varies, but your well-being, your spirituality, your community, your friends, your family, your faith, all the stuff. Well, I had gone through the process just recently of writing all of those down and putting the date and scoring myself, similar to what you had in the book. And then I had done some of the exercises already on my own, but you recommend them in the book. What would a 10 look like in these areas? And what is one direct action you're going to take? So I did all that. And then I wrote down how, a week later, I wrote down how each of those things made me feel. Like, if you were to say fun to me, what descriptive words came to me? And then I wrote that down. Well, what I loved out of that exercise, even though I've done that exercise for 15, 16 years, what I loved about it was your comment, and you actually had a picture drawn in there, that it's not so much what the numbers are, but kind of, are they clumped together so that it looks more like a wheel versus like something is a 1 and something is a 10, and it ka-clunk as it goes through. Because lately, when I've been looking at the next big moves, we got some big stuff coming over here. And when I started looking at what are the next big things that are coming, I can feel myself being pulled towards work and like almost doing the 10 and the 1 and having to catch myself and going, Michelle, that's not healthy. Like, you might have a blip of a 10, but you need to keep things a little bit more in
Tighter.
the same area. Yep. So then when I went back and looked at my numbers, everything was like a 6, 7, 8. And I was like, okay, I can deal with that, because that's a smoother ride than a 1 and a 10. Can you speak a little bit? I think when we all talk about keep your life so balanced, it's so much more than just that word.
It
like
is. It is. So I like to think of it more as like life work integration. Okay. Or integrating all of these things versus balance. Because if you think about a teeter-totter in a playground, that balancing, it's only balanced for a split second before one side goes up and one side goes down. So I don't love balance. I really love more this thought of how things can be integrated. And when we do that exercise that you're talking about, people, and I ask my clients, I do a version of that, and I ask my clients that it is a rare day. Like, I probably could count on one hand that someone has given everything a 5 or everything an 8 or everything a 2. There is bound to be some discrepancy between the numbers. And really, so let's say the wheel is, we've got 8s, we got 3s, we got 2s. It's a lopsided wheel, and it's kind of clunking along. And so then the next piece of that is, I say to them, no wonder you feel the way you feel, No wonder your business is going the way it's going. No wonder your relationship is the way it is, because things aren't smooth. And wheels are supposed to create energy, right? The faster a wheel goes, the more
Mhm.
energy it creates. Well, if it's not rolling, then it's taking energy from you. It's sucking energy away from you. And that's not what we want. We want to always create more energy. So it's just a good visual to give people an understanding of why they feel the way they feel or why they're getting the result they're getting. And then help them, number one, probably see that it is not gonna, we don't have to climb Mount Everest to get this wheel rolling again so that they're all eights, sevens, sixes. Like that's all that wheel would roll. It's not, we don't have, it's not gonna take tons. It's really just gonna involve you deciding what are the priorities, right? What are the priorities? And in the book too, I don't know if you remember this part, I talk about how some people are have kind of fear around the word goal. Like, I don't want to
Mhm.
set any goals. I don't want to set any. But if I say, okay, well, then what are your priorities? If we phrase it like that, it sounds so much more approachable.
It's
And it,
accessible, right?
yeah, it's accessible. And ultimately it's going to get you to the same place. So if, um, financial, people usually say to me, I just want to understand my numbers. Okay. So if we'll just go with their language, just want to understand my numbers. If that's something that's going to create peace in you, then let's just make that a priority. Because actually, to be honest, it would be really hard to create a measurable goal around understanding our finances. Like, what is that really? How do we know we're done? We don't know. Okay. But it's a priority. And then you can assess, how do you feel about that a month, 2 months, 6 months later? Right. So I think this, just that whole exercise really helps hone in on what do you want to focus on? What needs to be a priority? And especially when my clients come to me, they're usually in a state of overwhelm. They're usually in a state of overwhelm. They can't even necessarily figure out why. If they give me an answer about why, it's very specific and probably not really the whole truth. Well, if I could just get my social media together, then I wouldn't feel so overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, all right, but there's probably more to it than that,
Right,
right?
right.
So just understanding what's the priority. Is it organization in your business? Yes, social media is a component of that. Is it organization at home? If you've got a better handle on what's going on at home, how would it affect all the other parts of your life? And another thing that happens too is they come to me for a business reason, 9 times out of 10, and it does, our discussion and coaching does evolve into life coaching because
Mhm.
life is part of business. So that's why this is all kind of tangled up. I call it the big ball of yarn. And that's why the wheel, in order to roll, needs to have some semblance in all categories.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, the thing that, of course, it's been like, you could choose a word. It's been my word for a couple of years, but it's that word of intention, being
Yes.
intentional about what you do. And I think that was a good part of the book, because you are asking us to intentionally stop and look inside and
Yes.
ask, right? Because there's a piece of it that would have been easier in your example before, for you to not listen to your own intuition, your own judgment, your own feelings, your own thoughts, and to quiet those. You probably did quiet those for a while.
Yeah.
Well, I know that you did when you said just one more time. We're quieting that voice so that we can have the ease, like I've got 2 out of 3, quiet the voice and run the race, just keep
Yeah.
going. But there comes a point where these things aren't aligning, right? I talk about it like, when you go to the chiropractor, well, there are times that
Yes.
inside all that's not aligning. And we have to be intentional about having that necessary ending so that we can have a new beginning, so that we can, track a new path and create a new course forward. It takes intention. Same way with the financials. We have to be intentional about where we're spending, about where we're saving, about where the money comes and where the money goes to support things. And so I love how you take us kind of from the beginning to the end when you talked about, all of the big, what do you call them? The big, 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 the b like questions and, the processes and thinking through all of it is you're making a choice with an intention. And then the next choice follows along an intention. Like they're not going opposite. It's an intention that leads to the next thing to support it, that leads to the next thing to support it.
This concept is kind of something I've been fleshing out recently. It's not really in the book. I sort of mention it, but decisions versus choices.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay. So if you, I'll give you kind of a life example first. So if you are married, you decided, okay, if you're in a monogamous relationship, you decided long, long ago that, you were going to marry this person. So when you're invited to the office Christmas party and you can bring a date, your choice of who the date is going to be is pretty easy. It's like probably going to be your partner, right? This is like, so you've made a big decision that's led to easy choices.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we talk about our own lives or business, what are your big decisions? Like what's important to you what are the big decisions that you can make that then make those choices really easy? So I just had a client, she's stressing about summer. Okay. So she's stressing about the health of her business over the summer. For two reasons. Number one, she thinks that sales are going to go down because people are going to be at the beach. And number two, she thinks that she's got her kids home, so she's not going to be able to focus on her business. And I said to her, okay, so number one, you decided a long time ago that you wanted to have kids. And number two, you decided that you wanted to start a business. So we already made those decisions. But now let's make a decision around time. Like how much time do you want to spend working this summer? Like, what do you want to do? She's like, well, I mean, ideally, I just maybe 9 to 2 each day. Okay. I said, so when Sarah comes in and says, Mom, can we go to the park at 11 a.m.? What are you going to say? She's like, well, I guess I would just say, hey, this is when I'm working from 9 to 2. We can go to the park later. So that just made that choice in that moment so much easier because she had made that big decision around what her working hours were. And then you can do things with also less guilt, right? Less guilt.
Yeah. No, that's a great strategy because I remember I've done that same kind of thing. I have a podcast out there about when summer and taking my business on vacation and doing all the things. But a lot of it comes down to what is it that I really want? What is that big decision? And now what are the choices that are within that decision? Because I didn't make that decision. I made this one. Like I didn't make the decision in your early one to not be married. So now the field is wide open. I can grab Tinder and swipe right. That's not that is really not my choices at this point. When I've said yes to this man, I'm going to take you with me.
Right. And I think, another interesting piece of this is that it eliminates clutter in your brain. It just eliminates clutter in your brain. And it allows you to, if we're talking about big thinking, let's think big about summer. What if all of a sudden we kind of shift how you're positioning your offer and it is the thing that everybody wants when they go to the beach?
Mm-hmm.
Or like, how could we make summer your best season ever? You've already written it off, but that's a limiting belief. And I talk a little bit about that in the book. That's a limiting belief. You've already created your glass ceiling. We don't need to have that. Let's think beyond, and let's embrace the thought that you are a business owner who's in every season for you in your business is equal. There's no downside. There's no like blip. So that's big thinking. And if you can make big decisions, it makes these choices easier, which are going to support ultimately the big thinking.
Along with that, I think what's important is for us to realize that we're making the choices and decisions from a place of power.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Especially the decisions. We're making those from a place of power. Like nobody's forcing us to choose to start a business in most cases. And I'm talking about, talking in generalities here, but we're making those decisions from a place of intention and a place of desire and a place of power. And, the hard part is when you feel like you've got to make a decision or have a choice from things that you don't like. right? Or that aren't comfortable, or that you feel like you're pushed into a corner and you're having to come out. But if we can stop and look at that domino effect of just this decision led to these choices, this decision leads to this choices, it actually gives us back our agency. Now we're
Totally.
looking at it as, well, wait, I made that decision and this is the ripple effect. And now what am I going to do with that? I mean, that's the way that I talk about it all the time. I have a tagline, what you own, you can change. I own the decision, therefore I can change the decision. I own my choice, I could change the choice, but I own it, which puts me in the power position of this is my decision to make or my choice to make, and I'm not going to feel like it's happening to me. I'm going to feel like I'm participating in this process. It's a shift, a mental shift of power.
It is. It is a mental shift of power. In chapter 7, I talk about creating your power sentence too,
Oh, I know.
which
I
is
loved it.
like, I am a business owner who blah, 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 right? So it's not, I could be, I want to be, I am, those kinds of sentences. But when you were talking, I was thinking about committed versus interested.
Oh, that was
Okay.
so good. That
Yeah.
was
So
good.
this kind of aligns with that concept. A lot of times when on a coaching call, all I'm doing is helping someone decide, are they committed or are they interested? So are they committed to understanding their numbers? Or are they just interested because they think it's something they should be doing? You know, all good business owners understand that. Okay. Are you really committed? If you're committed, then they might reach out to you, or, you know, they're going to take those action steps. If
Well, they
they're
usually can define an action step, right? When
yes,
you commit
yes,
enough,
you're
action
gonna
steps
know
usually start to flow, at
they do.
least something that you can do to make that commitment a
Your
reality.
to-do list kind of makes itself,
Self. Yep.
right? It makes itself. If you're just interested, and this isn't like a judgment thing either. It's okay to be just interested, but and you can always move to committed. But if you're just interested, it's going to be something that you kind of like stew on. It takes up space in your brain, or you've got it on your list and it keeps moving every day. It just keeps going. Oh, I didn't do that yesterday. Oh, I didn't do it today. Oh, I'm gonna move it to tomorrow. But it's you kind of just ruminate on it. So
Hmm.
when someone says, "Hey, I'm I know I need to hire someone. I know I need to hire someone. I'm at that place. I need to hire someone." Okay, so I'm my next question is always like, "And what's getting in the way of doing that?" And a lot of times there's two answers. One is what's getting in the way? Probably me. Okay. The other answer is I don't know X, Y, and Z. And I think I need to know them. I said, okay. So right now, you're just in this interested phase of hiring. What you're telling me is you're just interested. You're not committed, because if you were committed, you wouldn't be getting in the way. You would be pushing yourself aside and moving forward. And if you were committed, you would be on the trail to find out the answers to those questions. You wouldn't be they just wouldn't be hanging out on, you know, a notepad. So this is a really, really important thing, especially for business owners, to have the skill to differentiate where they are. Are they committed or are they interested? And this can be about big things or even little things. Like, are you committed to exercising every day? If you're committed, then you're going to be okay if you only got 15 minutes walk in, because you're committed and you're going to count that as exercise. If you're interested, you're going to say, well, I mean, if it's only 15 minutes, that's not enough. I think I'll just wait till tomorrow. So I love this concept of committed to interested. It requires you, though, to have what I call thought options. Like, it requires you to access different thinking in your brain. And that's hard to do. Like, I always say, you're stuck in your own peanut butter jar and it's
Yep.
so sticky in there. You can sometimes can't even climb out to see what's going if the jelly's outside waiting for you. So a lot of times you do need support in creating those thought options. You're creating thought options with your clients every day. We could look at it, think about it like this. Here's the facts, but we could think of it this way or we could think of it that way. So yes, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but that's
Well, so I'll tell you for that particular concept,
yeah.
I loved it. It was another one in my journal. But I went back to my husband because some of the big ideas that I have are going to, I'm going to need him. Okay. And I read out of your book that particular piece. This was our morning coffee conversation. And I asked him, here's what I have in front of me. Here's some big thinking, big ideas, big planning that's going on. This is where I see you participating, but I need to know if you're interested or if you're committed. Because if you're interested, I'm going to go, and you don't want to change from interested to committed. You just want to stay interested. I'm
Yep.
going to go find another committed person to do this.
Yep.
But if
Yep.
you want to be that committed person, then I'm going to need the commitment. And I said, I'm going to give you a week or so to think about it if you're up for that. And he's like, yeah, let me have some time to think about, what all this is going to require. And then he said, and then we'll talk again. And I'm like, that sounds great. But instead of me going, are you with me or are you not? Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, where's your support? Why aren't you now? At least I understand for him, for anybody that I'd had this I understand the level of support, the level of engagement.
Yes.
Because there's a different level of support and engagement that goes with interested than what goes with committed. And so now I'm not setting an expectation for committed when it was an expectation of interested. So I'm just throwing that out there because that's how I immediately have already used that concept, just the differentiation between the two words, because sometimes we mix those two words up and use them together. And somebody might, well, I did that for you. And you're like, no, but you didn't really. Like it's a missing of expectations.
It is. And I think too, that brings in the support element of this whole conversation. I always say that really what big thinking is you need to trust. And I have this acronym TRUST. So the S stands for secure support. So I know your husband's involved with you in your business.
Yes, he is.
And okay, but he's still your husband, right? So, and I would bet you $1 million if I said to you, is he supportive? You'd say yes. Okay. But here's the thing, like, is he supporting you in the sense of husband? Like, is he fulfilling that role? And which is cool. Like, we're good with it. Or is he going to support you in the role of like business partner or whatever you're asking him to do? Right. So he can be committed, but we need to define where the commitment, which role he's playing and he's committed to.
Exactly.
Right?
And that just even that languaging opened up the conversation for, in other words, where do you want to play in this game?
Right.
And what does that look like so that we're not putting expectations on each other. I remember even going backwards, it's a little bit different word, but I remember saying to him one time when I had that pull up, I'm being mom and I'm being wife and I'm being business owner and I can't do it all and I suck at everything and I'm just going to shut it all down.
Forget
I think we've all had that feeling.
We all have.
And I, as a young mom, I had, 2 little boys and I asked my husband, I'm like, what do you need from me? Like, I feel like I am just falling apart here. I need to know what your expectations are. And he's like, I really don't expect much. He said, I really just want to come home from the office. I want the kids to be alive and I want you guys to be happy. He said, I'll help with dinner. I'll help with bath time. I'll help clean the dishes. I don't care if they're dishes in the sink. I just want to know that you and the boys are healthy and happy and I'll help you with the rest. And I was like, oh, it just like took all the expectations off of me. That if I couldn't get to something, I could get to, I could prioritize. What it did was it gave me the gift of prioritizing.
Yes.
And that's the same gift that you're suggesting too, that we can give ourselves in business. What is the real expectation that if this falls off the to-do list because there's no time, what gets moved to the top that we protect so that we don't miss the whole thing here as we're going through it. It just was such a gift to stop and think through it again.
I think too, for our listeners that don't have their spouses in their business, but want them to be as committed to the business as they are, you are kidding yourself.
That's right.
Right.
That's
You
right.
are totally kidding yourself. So a lot of times someone might say to me, hey, Andrea, I am so interested in working with you. I'm just going to think about it for a day or two and I'll get back to you. And so I always ask permission can I put my coach hat on? Like, can I take my consult hat off? Can I put my coach hat on? Sure. So what exactly are you thinking about? This isn't a judgment, but I'm just curious. I want you to like access your brain. What exactly are you thinking about? So usually they don't really have a great answer. They're just trying to find support in some way, evidence that this is a good decision to move forward. And the next most common answer, I feel like I'm on The Price is Right, or the Family Feud, where they have the which
Yeah,
answer
yeah,
is the
yeah.
next most
Ding,
common.
ding,
The
ding.
next thing is
3 out of 4.
right. The next answer is like, and then I need to talk to my partner about this. Okay, great. I'm all about like talking in relationships. What do you think in most cases, in my situation, what do you think he's going to say? Oh, he's going to say whatever I think.
So then
Okay.
what do you think?
Right. So then what do you think? Are you, where are you on this? And I'm just sort of curious, why are you asking them? Why are you even asking him? And they might say, well, we always talk about big decisions, blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah, but his role in this is to support you as a husband. He is not the business owner. You are the business owner. You have to commit to the decision. He's not committing to engaging in coaching. You are. So we want other people to be in on our commitments sometimes,
Right,
because we
right.
think it's going to feel better if we got all the people in on the commitment. But it's okay if they're just interested in what you're doing and only you are committed. I think that's a valuable thing for people
I
to
think it
realize.
is. And as we wrap up our conversation, I think it's giving ourselves permission, Andrea, to hear our own voice.
Yes. Oh, I
And
talk about permission all the time.
that what you just described is not hearing their own voice, but needing the affirmation and the support of somebody else's voice, right?
Yes. Yes.
And listen, I'm like you. I have a podcast, I coach, I work with people. There is certainly a time to rally the troops and get support and have insight from others. But every business owner needs to be able to hear their own thoughts and hear their own heart. Like that's an important skill. One of the best things we can do is know ourselves, because then we can move from a place of knowing ourselves. And so just giving us back the gift to think that way is amazing.
I love it.
So She Thinks Big.
So She Thinks Big is available on Amazon or your favorite bookseller.
Awesome.
And also I wanted to point out that there's a toolkit that goes with the book that you can access for free. And there's also a workbook. So, those are two sources of tools that
Yeah.
kind of help you do what Michele was describing, or you were describing in the beginning, of like processing all of this, because it is a lot. And I think I've learned that with all the business or nonfiction books I read, am I going to be a passive participant, or am I going to be an active participant in this process? And we can read all the books and listen to all the podcasts, and I like podcasts too, because I have my own, we got it all. But if you actively engage in some of this material, you're going to see amazing things happen.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for sharing. It was so fun to meet you, and then to be able to do 2 back-to-back podcasts to get to know each other and about our businesses. And I thank you for the book. It was
You're
a
welcome.
really amazing gift. It was a gift bigger than the book, is what I would tell you. A gift that was much bigger than that.
If your listeners are reading or doing it or whatever, go to Andrea's with an S, links with an S.com, and message me and tell me what you think. Andrea's Links has lots of other great tools and resources for you too, and a way to get back to me. Or you can just direct message me on Instagram. That's
Awesome.
fine too.
Well, we'll
Thank
put
you.
all of your channels in the show notes. And again, thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
Andrea, thank you so much for such just a great conversation. I really enjoyed the book, and I hope those that are listening will jump in and go buy it and see what it does in their business. I think you'll be surprised. We're all making shifts. We have some big shifts coming here at Scarlet Thread and at Matrique Solutions. It's true. We're growing. We're doing the same things everybody else is doing. So I want to encourage you to make sure that you sign up for our email so that you know what's coming and you are the first to get on the list. We have some opportunities for the CFO to go. We have some opportunities for our strategic workshop that we're going to be opening up this year to others. Just a lot of really cool ways that you can engage with us and us with you to journey at least even just a few steps in your business to support you. So make sure that you go to scarletthreadconsulting.com and get signed up for our monthly email newsletter, where we're sending you coaching information, or download one of the free documents that we have out there. Any of those will get you into our realm. Our goal at Scarlet Thread Consulting and Matrix Solutions is simply to empower you to know your financials in a way that you need to support your dreams, your desires, and your goals. And then to be able to use those numbers to make decisions. Knowledge is power, and knowledge makes you profitable. And as we can all probably say together by now, profit doesn't happen by accident. Profit is a Choice is proud to be part of the designnetwork.org, where you can discover more design media reaching creative listeners. Thanks for listening, and stay creative and business minded.